Hello and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns podcast for Friday, December 8th, 2023. My name is Tom Luongo and we have a lot to talk about. It is episode 163 and I have with me my frequent guest and very good friend and collaborator in all things geopolitics and, well, all roads lead to London. Mr. Alex Krainer is with me again today. So I hadn't really had a chance to talk to Alex for a few weeks because we gone past each other. We usually do the show with Crypto Rich every month, but last month he couldn't do it. Then this month I couldn't do it. So I wanted to get Alex on the podcast to just kind of get him free from the multi-person thing that we've been doing recently. So Alex, how are you? How you been?
I'm doing well, Tom. Good to be with you again. Let's get rolling.
Yeah. So before we got started, I asked Alex, I'm like, Alex, what are we going to talk about today? He's like, God, there's so much to talk about, and yet I don't know what to do. And we were just on with Crypto Rich and Ifrat. I can't
Fenixon.
forget. Say that again.
Efrat Fenixon.
Thanks. Thank you. And apologies, Efrat. I'm sorry. We were on yesterday and we were talking about a whole rash of shit. And Alex brought up the fact that we didn't really touch on Ukraine very much. And and Ukraine is very interesting right now. So since you brought it up, Alex, I'm going to let you take the floor and do the thing because hell, I hogged the crap out of the microphone yesterday. So why don't you go? Why don't you go for it? What do you think is happening in Ukraine? What are you seeing?
Well, I think that Ukraine is in the end game. They lost the war. There's no two ways about that now. And the $10 trillion question is what happens afterwards. What? Because obviously every war ends. Every war ends at a negotiating table. Some kind of an armistice, some kind of a peace is going to be signed. And the big question is what kind of a peace is going to be signed, because obviously Russia has all the cards and it's going to be their terms. And I sense it's obvious that the West is in a kind of a panic. The NATO is lost in space, and it, at this point we can only speculate what's coming. But I think that um, as I discussed earlier this week with Sean Ring, I think that the problem is that Russia cannot stop at Ukraine. The logic of the conflict uh, frame. This is a battle in the big conflict. This is not one war in itself, and what is the conflict? The conflict is, as Soros said, as other people in that same camp also say, it's the conflict between two systems of governance. And so, Soros calls it open societies versus closed societies. Others call it democracies versus authoritarian regimes. But this conflict doesn't stop at Ukraine, and so it'll be very interesting to see how Russia's victory in Ukraine will impact that conflict. Now, here's here's what I think is extremely relevant. Russia has been at the receiving end of invasions and war from the West for the last 400 years, right? Started with it started before that, but the Poles invaded in early 1600s, the Swedes invaded in early 1700s, Napoleon invaded in early 1800s, the Germans invaded in 1941, and now we had this war by proxy through Ukraine by NATO, which was obviously putting pieces in place to destroy Russia. That they're not even shy about talking about it. And so defeating Ukraine and achieving its security objectives in Ukraine does not end that conflict. And I think that this time around, the Russians are not going to be content to close the chapter on Ukraine and then pretend like everything else is okay. I think that they have to disenfranchise this whole cabal that has been so hostile to Russia for centuries now. And obviously, we're talking about the Swedes and the Poles and the French and the Germans. It's clearly not the same powers that are attacking Russia, but it is that system of governance.
Yep.
And I think that we might come closer to understanding where the rest of it goes if we understand what is this system of governance. Obviously, it's the imperial colonial system of governance that basically subjugates other nations in order to capture their resources and in order to capture their population, because resources are no good if you don't have slave labor to extract them. And then what happens with those resources is that they are turned into financial flows in the Western financial markets. They become the collateral of the Western banks. So they make it possible for that fraudulent and unsustainable financial system to carry on, to keep the credit impulse going on the basis of those collaterals, to turn them into tradable securities, to trade them, to speculate. The flows of money turns into financialized assets of this Western banking system,
Mm-hmm.
and it empowers always the same oligarchy that is in control of that monetary system. And so I think that today the Russians and the Chinese and probably the Iranians and other more sophisticated powers in the world, I would even probably put Venezuelans in that category,
Mm-hmm.
understand now who the adversary is, that the Ukrainian armed forces are the enemy in this current war, but the actual adversary are the people who are pulling the string, the ultimate puppet masters. And I think that if you defeat your enemy but leave the puppet masters in place, they will regroup and they will charge at you again. Maybe not next year, maybe not in 10 years, but they will. That's a given.
Yep.
Because that's how they roll. That's what they're after. They're after your collateral. They're after your resources. And Russia has a colossal abundance of them. It's one of the most, and not only that, but Russia is the obstacle to their control of the Eurasian landmass, which is the bulk of the world's resources.
Right.
So it seems to me that the leadership of Russia and of China are today aware of their adversaries, and I think that the logic of this conflict imposes it on them that they have to go after them, that they have to I don't know a better word, but they have to disenfranchise them.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
And ultimately, they're going to have to move the world order towards a different monetary system, one that would make this impossible, and one where oligarchies are going to have to be cut to size.
Yep. Yeah, no,
So,
I think you and I have talked about this many times. Isn't that it's the collateral that they have been able to extract. Remember, it's the price at which they extract the collateral, and then they've been able to lever that up. Like, everybody got a taste of this year during the uprising in Niger, right, where we found out that the French had been extracting uranium out of Niger at what, I don't know, at less than $1 a kilogram, and selling on the open market for a lot more than that, for 150, upwards of 100 and almost 200 a kilogram now. And it's that kind of arbitrage, right? When you are pulling stuff out of a foreign land for uh, for less than 1% of what you can sell it for in the open market, it empowers a lot of tyranny. It buys a lot of bribes. It buys a lot of infrastructure. It buys a lot of everything. And when you force them to pay the full price for the collateral of their monetary system, all of a sudden, you know, there isn't as much leverage. There isn't as much that leverage is the key to the way oligarchies empower themselves and enfranchise themselves. So to use your word, so I think that is the story, that the Chinese understand this, the Russians understand this, and they're trying to now teach that to the rest of the world. That's what I'm seeing. That we see that as they teach this lesson to the Saudi Arabians and the Emiratis and Iran and everybody else. Like, no, you have the power. Ultimately, they don't. They need you to be their vassals, to be their partners. But
Yeah,
you're the one with the actual power because you're the one with the actual stored ergs of energy. It's just that
yes,
simple.
yes, and I think that this lesson is being learned very rapidly, also by African countries. You mentioned Niger.
Mm-hmm.
You see Venezuela. They had less than a week ago. They had that referendum
Mm-hmm.
about Guyana, and I think that during the week they actually formally declared Guyana part of Venezuela. So as far as Venezuela is concerned, Guyana is Venezuela now.
Now, I
And
haven't followed that story much at all.
yeah,
And
I
so if you have any color that you want to like throw into that as to why Venezuela made this move now, what I don't know the history between Guyana and Venezuela. I don't know anything really about it. So if there's historical color and context to this conflict, I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, so okay, Guyana, the current borders between Guyana and Venezuela have been defined by an arbitral decision in Britain, while Guyana was a British colony. Yeah, there you go. And that was in 1899. And of course, Venezuela has never accepted it. But being a third world dump, there was not very much that they could do about this. But this conflict has been going on for decades now, and Venezuela has been formally uh, challenging the 1899 decision since Guyana declared independence in 1966. And so this has been on the table at the UN forever, but nothing has been done about it. Uh, the arbitral decision of 1899 is legally on glass legs. It's worthless.
Right.
And Venezuela does have solid legal grounds to consider that part of their own territory.
Okay.
So why now? I think that because they see the empire overstretched. They are gung ho on going to war against China. They just got defeated in Ukraine, and they substantially disarmed themselves by supporting Ukraine. And now they're lost in space in the Middle East. They don't quite, their gambit of starting World War III failed, and now I think that they're making it up as they go along. They don't know exactly what to do next. They're as we discussed with Rich and Efrat yesterday, it seems to me that they've been, they got their Dwight Eisenhower carrier strike group through the gates of Hormuz, maybe, set up a sitting duck for a false flag attack that they could blame on Iran and then start somehow finagle World War III anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not quite working out. The world's onto them. The unified position of the West is coming apart at the seams. Maybe most Western powers, other than the United States and Britain and Israel, are not interested in this scenario. That they're not on board. And so, if you're Maduro sitting there and Miraflores Palace in Caracas, you're thinking like, hey,
Alex,
that,
it's funny. I can come up with a very an easier answer than that. Like the Russians and the Chinese have put a lot of money into Venezuela, and they've given Maduro a lot of support over the last 5 or 6 years, certainly since Trump
yeah,
put the ridiculous, shock and awe tariffs, the same tariffs that are same sanctions that he put on Iran, he put on Venezuela at the same time. And we tried to get rid of Maduro. You brought up Juan Guaido yesterday during our chat, which was hilarious. Um, this is one of those things. Like when you remember, like everything is especially with Putin, everything is parallel aggression, right? You push me in one area, I'm going to push you in another area. Oh, so we were now going to have fight a two-front war in over Israel, Gaza after Ukraine. Oh, no. You have to deal with a forest fire over in Venezuela. And oh, by the way, I literally did not know one thing about Venezuela, Guyana when I asked you the question. And yet in the back of my head, I'm like, is this another one of those idiotic British, Venezuela, not Venezuela scenarios as the British leave the area? And then you start to talk and I'm like, I had to turn my microphone off. I was laughing too hard. It's just, I didn't want to I didn't want to laugh over you. I actually have learned a couple of things in being a podcast host over the last few years. It's crazy. I was like, this is definitely going to be a Brit thing. Oh, there it is. Yep, it's a Brit thing. So, so it's very obvious that this is I think I'm yet another one of those. Look, you're gonna pull Argentina away from the BRICS with this guy Milei. Well,
yeah,
because he said no to the BRICS, and that's fine. He wants to re-dollarize. I'm not sure about how I feel about that guy. I haven't formalized an opinion on him yet, other than he's a little enthusiastic for my tastes.
yeah,
But I can see that given what's gone down in Argentina and the way that's played out, I can see Maduro and Putin and Xi going, yeah, no, let's open up the Guyana.
yeah. And but then it gets better because Maduro, they don't have to go to war. They don't have to flood Guyana with Venezuelan troops. Right? They can, but it complicates things for the United States and Britain, for the Western Empire enormously because Exxon has those the oil reserves that have been discovered offshore Guyana, which are apparently enormous, but I don't know what the number is. I asked a couple of people. These Exxon, they exaggerate them for obvious reasons. So I don't know that we know exactly, but it's something. It's something and it's valuable. It boosts Exxon's stock, the interest rates on their bonds and capital and all of that. So it works for them. It works for them to exaggerate, but it's going to be substantial. But so it's enough for Venezuela to just kind of legally harass the Western Empire over this, because remember a few years ago, the United States expropriated Venezuela's investments in the United States. The Venezuelan government owned Citco,
Right.
and you know how in the West private property is sacred, so they just took them. And then Bank of England confiscated their gold.
Yep.
And so, the question is going to be, what's it worth to you guys? Give us back our gold. Give us back Citco. Pay us back for the for the emotional trauma and the lost profits and so on. So, the bill's going to come due, and it's probably going to be a lot more than they're going to be willing to pay. And then, are they going to go to war to protect Exxon's control of those resources? Well, as you said, Venezuela has Russian and Chinese backing, diplomatically at the very least. At the United Nations Security Council, the American position is again on very thin ice, and it's the the maneuvering space is becoming increasingly restricted. And one of the things about Milei in Argentina that I think is very interesting, and I agree with you, he's awfully keen and he's all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that he's been saying is that they're definitely going to take the Malvinas Island, which the British call the Falkland Islands, and that's a sore spot for the Brits and for the Argentinians. And in Argentina, you have a total consensus that that's Argentinian territory, and sooner or later they're going to want it back.
Yep.
And how are the Brits going to defend that? I don't think they can now. 40 years ago they could. Today they cannot.
Right.
And so they could be stretched there.
Well, it's funny. What's funny. I was thinking about this earlier, and I didn't mean to cut in, but I was thinking about Milei is interesting because he's talking about. I see the whole thing with him re-dollarizing and all of this. I see that as that's a Wall Street thing to me.
Yeah.
It just
absolutely.
feels like a Wall Street thing to me. It feels like okay, look, we're just he's going to open up he's going to finally open up Argentina properly and allow its resources to be utilized properly and whatnot. And we just want a piece of this, and we don't want it hived off. And I use the term Wall Street not in the pejorative sense in this respect. I really don't, for once, because I think that Argentina was a weird addition to the BRICS. I had a hard time squaring it when it happened over the summer. I wrote a lot about, look at the 6 countries that they added and the geographical boundaries of it. You and I talked about it at length, right? I wrote about it at length, and then I had to come up with, and then there was Argentina, and I'm having to scramble to come up with the reasons why. And the best I can come up with was, well, they're natural resources, and which is reality. But these are natural resources that we need into the global economy today. That, by the way, that those shitbag Europeans that we were talking about earlier, the oligarchs, don't want out on the open market unless they can control them at pennies on the dollar. And I don't see that Wall Street at this point is looking for that. I think what Wall Street is looking for is places to invest their money. Because there aren't a lot of options left because the BRICS are taking a lot of them away. And U.S. policy and U.S. and Western sanctions policy is making it very difficult to invest abroad. So making it almost impossible. And so there comes a point where you're just Argentina, it's fine. We just all need to make some money here. And it almost feels like okay, guys, you can win this battle. It's okay. And I think it would be good for Argentina. There's in a lot of ways, stabilize the situation.
Well, I think, Tom, this would be good for Argentina. Exactly one credit cycle. If he goes through with this, and he already backpedaled, right? Mm. He already backpedaled on dollarizing Argentinian economy. Mm-hmm. If it went through, they would be good for one credit cycle, and then after that, it would make for good GDP growth numbers, employment, the aggregates. The glossy brochure kind of good for Argentina,
right?
But ultimately, it would turn Argentina into a colony, because the idiocy of depriving yourself of your own currency is that you completely lose the most important and most powerful tool of your domestic economic policy, which is, the credit creation. So, you would actually give the importance of the tool is that you get to decide how you're going to employ credit, how you're going to use it, what kind of development you're looking for in your country. For Wall Street, it's give me your resources for the lowest possible price and maximum possible profits, and the rest, I don't give a shit. You don't need to have healthcare. You don't need to have pension. You don't need to have vacation time. You don't need to have an environmental protection. Nothing that's profitable needs to exist. Back when Menem was this already happened with Menem, and same hairdo even. Menem went with the Washington boys, with the Chicago boys and Washington Consensus, and opened up Argentina to Wall Street again, quote unquote Wall Street to Western capital. One example is Argentina had a rail network which was, I think, about 20,000 kilometers. Well, one of the first things that they decided when they privatized Argentina's railways is that they discontinued all the unprofitable routes. So it shrunk rapidly to 3,000 kilometers. But at the same time, all of the regions that depended on those railroads for trade, the economy died there. And what's the purpose of the railroads? What's the purpose of the whole everything about infrastructure? Is not to be profitable enterprise in and of itself. It's to lower the cost of transactions. It's to lower the cost of development. And so if you have well-developed infrastructure, take example of the Erie Canal, which was built in the late 1800s, right?
Or
early 1900s.
Was it that
1700s? Well, shit, now I'm blanked out, but it doesn't matter. A long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
Long time ago. Maybe early 1800s. I forget. Okay, whatever. It's easy enough to find. The Erie Canal lowered the cost of trade between the east coast of the United States and the Great Lakes by 90%.
Yep.
You know what that does? That kind of catalyzes an economic boom across the region that's connected with those canals. And the same thing is true of railroads and roads and airports and ports and so on. And so, a government needs to look at the economic development of the country, not of extracting financial flows to the maximum from only profitable enterprise. You need, universities, you need schools, you need a good postal service.
You need a railway to get all of the natural resources out of the area that are being mined and or extracted from the area, be it the timber or the cattle or the logs or the silver or the gold or whatever. And by the way, officially, you can get names and dates from Wikipedia. 1825 is when the Erie Canal was completed. It began in 1817.
Exactly. Well, that's what I said.
Oh, by the way, and so that's what's interesting about that is that the minute you say that, I'm thinking to myself, and while you're talking about that's what made Chicago, along with all of the build out of the insane rail system, which in the United States, all roads led to Chicago, which is why Chicago is Chicago is the city that it is. That's why the mercantile exchange is there and all the rest of it. Like the history of the United States in so many ways runs through the industrial age, runs through the development of the city of Chicago.
Yeah,
it starts with the Erie Canal, and then then the railroads, and then all the rest of it.
Yeah, so those things are extremely important, and they are long-term developments. They're not you cannot decide them on the basis of quarterly or annual profit reports and short-term profits. And those decisions about that development is important to the Argentinian people, but it's not important to Jamie Dimon. It's not important to the people. It's not important
to it's really the guys like Paul Singer, right? Who these are the vulture capital, the real vulture capitalists who who organized the previous pegs in order to sell the Argentinians on these dumb IMF plans and the currency pegs. And then when they, knowing full well that they were going to break down the bonds, they bought the bonds at, they shorted the bonds the entire time on the way down. And then they bought them at pennies on the dollar when everything collapsed. And then after the bailout, sues the government of Argentina in New York to get paid out at par.
Yeah, exactly.
They did this to Argentina like 3 times. Yeah,
there you go. And then they've done it with other countries, I think, including Haiti. They take the poorest of the poor and they squeeze them dry. But anyway, so I just don't see why Milei would be doing this, and I don't see how he would be able. It's so obvious that I don't think that he will be able to do it.
No, I don't either.
Because,
Well,
because
and something else that somebody said to me, and I don't know how true this is. Again, I don't know much about Argentina, so I apologize for we're like chatting about stuff that I'm way out over my skis on today. But I don't think that the president of Argentina has all that much power in the first place. And
no,
really,
no, he does.
most of the
Well,
powers are
yeah,
vested in the legislature. So,
yeah, exactly. So he has plenty of opposition, and it's questionable how much power he does have. And then
mhm.
those are the detail that I don't know a whole lot about either. But I talked to some people who do know that kind of stuff, and they're not very confident that he's going to be able to do a hell of a lot. And
Mhm.
then also, remember, if you dollarized your economy, and now credit creation in your nation depended on the World Bank, IMF, Wall Street banks, and so on, he's also railing about this wokery.
Mhm.
Where does the wokery come from? Hello,
All those same
it
people.
comes same people. So they're going to tell you, okay, if we're going to give you I don't know, $20 billion to develop your whatever, mining, agriculture, soybeans. But you're going to have annual gay pride parade, and you're going to have to teach, uh, give puberty blockers to your kids, and you're going to have drag queens reading them, children's story. So what are you going to do at that point? You're going to say like, oh well, I guess we need those credits. So no, I mean it's so obvious that I don't think it's going to pass ever.
Mhm.
And I did read somewhere a headline that he's already backpedaling for that from that.
Yeah, it seems like a weird. It seems like a weird scenario. Argentina is one of those places that it's important, and again, it comes down to another one of these places where it's extremely important because of the amount of collateral they have in the ground. And then you say to yourself, why aren't they rich? Why are they poor? Over why? And we opened the show talking about Russia and how Russia's finally said, no, we control the collateral. It's ours. You can't have it, and we're willing to go to war with you over it. And Argentina has never been allowed to get out of its own way through the constant colonization effects of the constant the turmoil that comes from colonization that hasn't allowed them to build up. And so I is it it's Millet is a very interesting figure to me, and I don't know. Again, I keep saying to myself over and over again, he just seems like a cartoon. He seems like the
Yeah.
cartoon version of what look, I, I've said this kind of before. Like, I don't write about Marxists or try to write like a Marxist because it just comes off cartoony. I can always tell when a person, when a writer, be it a script writer or or whatever, or speech writer or whatever, is trying to write libertarians, and they're not libertarians. Like, I can tell when a Marxist is writing libertarian. I can tell it's really obvious because they come off cartoony. I'll give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. People, almost everybody in this audience will know. Mal from Firefly was written by Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon is a fucking shitbag commie through and through. And when you really watch Firefly and you listen to the words that comes out of Mal's mouth, no libertarian actually talks this way. The same
Right.
Millet gives me that same feeling. He gives me that same feeling of being it's like, and Vivek Ramaswamy gives me the same heebie-jeebies, like the same false, canned, like this is the way this is the way they think we talk, right? And they don't,
Yeah.
and it's like, and you know what I mean? This comes off so goddamn fake, and I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about the guy. But it just, I've been,
I have to say that I get the same impression. He says a lot of stuff that sounds good at first blush, but if you think about it for 10 seconds longer, then it triggers more questions and answers, and then you see that he's not giving those answers, or his answers are not really coherent, and the whole thing becomes a little bit suspicious. I mean, to me, it's very suspicious.
Yeah,
But anyway, I think that the part of the reason I know, probably the main reason why Argentina is constantly in shit is because they're being squeezed by the usual suspects. They have
right.
44, $45 billion debt to the IMF. They're being squeezed with these how do you call them, structural reforms, and they're
Mhm.
a huge chunk of their budget is going to paying off the interest on those loans. People are squeezed to the bone. So I think that 45% of the GDP of the country is actually transacted in the black markets. So the government can't make its budget, so they have to print money. So they constantly have trouble with inflation. People are sick and tired of getting ripped off by inflation. So,
Mm.
I think this is part of the reason why Milei is claptrap about dollarizing the Argentinian economy could even sound halfway appealing, because people
Right.
just want stability. They want to
Something.
be able to plan their lives. They want some predictability to the development. But I think that the only way that that's going to happen if is by them defaulting on the IMF debt,
Of
and
course.
I think that at this time they probably can't.
Right.
I think that, well,
Someone else is going to have to go first, Alex.
yeah, exactly. Someone else is going to have to go first. But with Millet, they're not going to be going in
It's not
that
going to be
direction,
him.
and so I think it's going to be uh, a new new rhetoric, but same outcomes.
Sadly.
Sadly, yes.
So bringing that point up or extending on the point I just brought up, and you and I've talked about this before, but this is to give you an idea of where our heads are in this. Who is going to be the first to default on the IMF debt or the World Bank? Because that's the key. That's the one that's like laying out there, right? That everybody is, they're that's the shoe that no one's talking about, right? But it's like hanging over us, getting ready to drop. It's the sword of Damocles that sits over the entire Western um, banking oligopoly, whatever you want to call it, right? That's their sword of Damocles. Like,
Yeah.
how do they? Because if they lose that, they literally lose everything else.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, exactly, exactly. And so that brings us, full circle to what we started talking about, is that, this conflict between the two systems of governance is not going to end with Ukraine. It's
mm,
going to go into the probably reform of the IMF, reform of the UN Security Council and UN, or as you said, maybe the global authority is going to be shifting to the BRICS from the UN. Oh no, maybe it wasn't yesterday's. I think maybe I just watched that on one of those Alexander Mercour's podcasts.
mm,
Somebody was talking about that. The global security architecture is going to be shifting to the BRICS. Anyway, the thing is that there is a legal doctrine about odious debt,
mm-hmm.
and it's if many countries like Argentina, like Rwanda, Congo, whatever, Haiti, Jamaica,
Egypt.
uh, Egypt, uh, maybe most of the global South
Mm-hmm.
would have a very, very solid case, probably a slam dunk solid case, if they came to an impartial tribunal.
Sure.
So I think, my contention has been that the Russians will seek to overturn this global system of governance, the Western system of governance, by changing the legal framework of the new global order, where countries are going to be able to say, uh, we cannot pay our debts. Our debts, Greece, we don't have to go far. Our debts we were saddled with these debts in corrupt and illegal ways, and the people of this country should not be forever shackled paying back these debts because they're odious debts, so they should be canceled.
Of course.
And at that point, Wall Street, City of London, IMF, World Bank, they get like a massive, massive haircut of whatever, 50%, 80%, 90%, maybe 100%. And
Well,
then
that's the gig. The question, and whenever you listen to these people talk, and we you and I've talked about this before. Whenever these issues come up, they're always willing to restructure as much as possible. They will never write down a dollar of the debt, no matter what they do.
Yes.
They could string the debt out for 150 years and make the repayment schedule a complete and utter fucking joke. But the principle of not writing down the principal $1 has to be inviolate. Otherwise, the entire thing collapses as a conceit. And so, you and I talked about this over the summer vis-a-vis Egypt, when the Chinese were pressuring the IMF to write down Egypt's debt. And I still think that one of these countries is going to have the Russians and the Chinese are going to look at them and go, look, default. Don't worry about it. Don't pay them back. They're not going to invade you. Because every time the Russians stand up to NATO, right, and we do this dance where we dance around each other through proxies, but we don't actually, do the dance, where we actually fight directly. That's a key. That's a signpost to the rest of the world. Oh no, NATO really doesn't want to fight the Russians. And the Russians, well, for their part, don't really want to fight NATO. Now, the question is, the Russians go into every one of these conflicts with their eyes wide open. They know exactly what they're doing. And the ripple effect is, oh, look, the Russians pushed and NATO didn't push back. Oh, they pushed back through proxies. They pushed back through plausible deniability, but they never actually went to blows. NATO Article 5, blah, 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 blah. And because of that, that calls into question the idea of whether or not NATO, under the right circumstances, or the West, the U.S., whomever, would come in and say, "Oh, you're going to default on your IMF debt? Well, that's fine. We're going to invade your country." Okay, there's going to come a moment where that bluff is going to get called, and the default is going to happen, and the troops aren't going to move.
And the whole thing collapses. Absolutely. Yeah, and it's not only that, but also, one thing that we learned in Ukraine is that a lot of this, when war in Ukraine started, there was still this wildly held view that West had technological edge in military technologies over Russia, because they hooked the Ukrainians into fighting with, they had all these hundreds or maybe thousands of javelins, and they thought that they were just going to be wiping the floor with the Russian tanks. And the Stinger missiles, they thought they'd be just downing all the Russian planes and helicopters. And, the Challenger tanks and the Leopard 2 tanks and the Abrams tanks and all of this. And now it turned out that they don't have this advantage and that a lot of these weapons are actually useless. That is, they're easily defeated. A tank has a longer range, a longer fire range than a javelin missile. And the Russians have shown that they are extraordinarily accurate with their tank fire, And so these people who were waiting in ambush, they all got blown up before the tanks even came into their range. So, all of these lessons, I think, are being keenly observed around the world, and people have lost fear of that. Ooh, we're gonna bomb you. We're gonna do to you what we did to Libya and to Syria and so on. That's no longer a paralyzing fear for anybody. The danger still is that they have, for example, the thing in Israel could end up toppling al-Sisi in Egypt. That's, so
they speak more of that. I hadn't considered that at all. So I Throw some color in on
Well,
that.
you know,
Well,
the situation in Egypt is very tense. You know, the Muslim Brotherhood apparently still has a strong following. Al-Sisi is being lambasted like as an Israeli agent, um, and so they're piling on pressure because, well, maybe this is now dissipating a little bit, but you know, they were um, they were challenging him very strongly for not reacting um, to the genocide of the Palestinians,
mm,
and they were saying, he's an Israeli agent. But you know, whatever the case there is, the point I want to make is that the Western powers, you know, short of invading another country, still have ways um, to challenge the regimes that are not friendly to them, to topple them, to assassinate, to organize color revolutions, and this and that. And I think that this Chinese Russian multipolar world is they've learned how to counteract that, as we've
mhm.
seen, you know, in Turkey, in Kazakhstan, in
Belarus, like,
Belarus, in what was it? Is it in Kyrgyzstan
mhm.
after Kazakhstan?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of those stands. But you know, they are, you know, they have been successful in Armenia. That's been a dumpster fire,
Mhm.
and you know, they could potentially topple Al-Sisi. Um, they're still not, you know, they're constantly undermining Assad government, doing all
It-
kinds of stuff.
yeah, I don't think they'll get
Attack.
Assad, but I mean, I agree with you. I think you know, um, the color revolution playbook, which, you know, if you read Richard Poe, goes back hundreds of years. The British
Yes.
have been doing this for a long, long time,
Yeah.
and Richard's work on this is exemplary. Um, the that playbook hasn't been completely neutralized, but you can see it coming. My point about the IMF thing is that Russia and China will pick a country to lay a Thucydides trap on them. That's how this will work. It will not be some random country decides to go off the rails and then, you know, we're defaulting on our IMF debt and then look to the Russians and the Chinese to give them a hand. It'll be coordinated. It will be
Right.
coordinated beforehand. They will have all their ducks in a row. The infrastructure will
Yeah.
be in place. There will be you will see things like, oh, the Chinese and some random country issue swap lines between their currencies, bilateral currencies, and blah, and this, and there'll be an investment deal that goes along with it. This is how they're setting up the Saudi Arabia thing, right? They're setting up the
Yeah.
infrastructure on this, right? Um, and the Saudi Arabian example of how to get out from underneath the Western oligarchy that their former partners, I think, is very important. Because, you know, looking at the ways they have they have to get out of that in some way, and it's not going to be easy for them to do so. And they have to do it in such a way that they cause as little trouble as possible, because um, you know, otherwise, because I'm sure the situation in Saudi Arabia is still pretty tense ultimately, as to what they, you know, where the House of Saud should, you know, which way they should go. So, um, it's just, you know, when you think about that, and then you think about, okay, what other potential countries could do this thing, take that step, it's going to be decided upon, and then we'll watch it play out in real time.
Maybe that's going to open the floodgates. But I think that ultimately it's going to have to go through some kind of a tribunal. You know, there's going
Mm-hmm.
to have to be some kind of a tribunal where this doctrine of odious debt is going to be tested and set a
Mm-hmm.
precedent. Because, you know, in that way you finalize the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you just default, then you know this can remain a financial instrument forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can buy today defaulted on. Venezuelan bonds for, I don't know, 6, 10 cents on the dollar and hold them and wait around until one day you find some way to squeeze
Mhm.
Venezuela in, I don't know, Southern District Court of New York or whatever in the United
Mhm.
Nations or WTO, and they might get some arbitration decision that they have to pay it
Yeah,
back or
you're hoping that somebody uses you can use backdoor pressure to force a political horse trade
exactly.
in your favor. Yeah.
Yeah, so these tails are going to be dragging themselves forever. It's going to have to be some kind of um, a legal decision that's going to make it final, and that everybody was going to agree, and then whoever thinks they have claims, it'll be no, this was decided in such and such tribunal. It has legitimacy. It's final and over with. You have no grounds to sanction Venezuela or Jamaica or whoever. It's over. It's done. You have no leg to stand on.
You hope for this, Alex. The problem, of course, is that I'll give you a perfect example of the way this will be. This, again, I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is, I just know these people well enough to know that they have rules, they have laws, and they'll turn around and go, well, that was the Biden administration, we're the Trump 2 administration, and we don't listen, and we don't believe that anything those fucking people did. So we're doing this, and that's the way it's going to be. And then because at the end of the day, we are talking about people who write laws to subjugate us, not themselves.
Yes, exactly,
So
exactly. But
decisions, so to them, words mean nothing. Paper means nothing. All that matters to
yes,
them is
but
what gun do they have that they can bring to the table on this particular day to get this particular fucking thing done. That's it. That's the way they operate. And
I
I wish I could respect them for it because they're just because it's just I mean look, you bring the gun to the table and you honor your contracts. That's one thing. But when you bring the gun to the table and don't honor your contracts, that's when civilization breaks down.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that I agree with you 100% that that's been this system of governance.
Right.
This last several centuries, it worked that way, but like it works until it doesn't.
Yes.
And so we've come to the point where it's not working anymore.
Mhm.
And it's going to be a matter of time before a different framework of international law and different powers enforcing it are going to take over. This is clearly the intent.
Mhm.
And then all of this shit falls into the toilet. All
Mhm.
of these things that they think that they control, that they think that they can, play one
Manipulate.
side against the other, sanction, topple, orange color revolutions, rose revolutions, whatever. It's all going to come to a grinding halt, and then, all of their it's going to be epic. They're
It
going to
is.
find them with the really short end of the stick in the whole equation.
And if they don't watch they really don't. There comes a point where you you just have to look at the situation and go, okay, we've lost, and what can we do to salvage the situation? And I honestly think that with Ukraine, just to bring this like right back to the beginning of the thing, as I was saying yesterday in our talk with Efrat and Crypto Rich, that I think Europe understands this. As a matter of fact, I think that this was always Europe's plan, which was to leave the United States and the Brits isolated on this issue of extending the war in Ukraine. If they were able to pull it off, and they were able to break through and the Russians and repulse the Russians and move them back to Moscow and all the rest of it, great, we'll take the win. But the minute the things started to turn against them, their plan of moving towards their own they have their own plans. You army, fiscal and political integration, the collapsing of the member central banks into the EU, into the ECB, and all of that stuff. That's all running. That's all part of this, and this is just part. There's it's a flow chart of how to get from point A to point B, and there's many ways of getting there. And well, we could win in Ukraine or we could lose in Ukraine. If we lose in Ukraine, we do this. if Ukraine starts to lose, we do this. If Ukraine wins, well, we get what we want. And I think that's the dividing line here. And as I was trying to say yesterday about the situation with Israel Gaza, because of that failure, and because it's now clear that you've got the neocons, the Anglosphere neocons, for lack of a better term, out over their skis, right? Now you push the political wedge to the ultimate within Israeli politics over Israel and the Palestinians. And as Europeans, you in effect say, look, we invited the Muslim world as refugees when Syria blew up. Like, this is the game they're playing. We've invited a lot of them into our country. And so we're on the side of and we're against genocide, even though they were probably instrumental in setting up the initial attack in the first place, though they knew it was coming, and they still played the game. Like, this is the kind of this is the level of mendacity, and I'm being nice in using that word, that these people engage in. So.
Yeah, and I think that this dawning of the realization we lost, I don't think they even go there. I don't think they even go there. They just we're losing. Let's set something new alight.
Right.
Let's blow up something else.
Again, in the order of operations of how they get to where they want to go, there's multiple paths there's always decision points, and they always have two decisions. And as long as they've mapped out, no matter what, they just go, oh, well, we have to take the right fork to get back on track as opposed to the left fork to get back on track. And that's when I watch them operate, that's what I see. I just see a very linear, they're still very linear in their thinking. We're going to there. Wherever there is, and in their case, it's depopulation and all the stuff that Alex Jones was talking with Tucker Carlson about, which if you haven't watched that interview yet, you should. It's phenomenal, by the way.
I watched about 5 minutes of it. So you think I should watch the whole thing?
I thought Alex Jones was absolutely devastatingly on target he was so good as a way to come back into the pop in that Indian for the first time in 6-7 years for him to do a big interview like that. Where the last time he was on Joe Rogan.
Man, if he did a big interview with Tucker Carlson, that means that he's probably going to be back on Twitter on X.
Well, I think that's what Elon Musk is now mulling over, many ways. So we'll see what happens. I know, it'd be great. Alex Jones back on Twitter like that. That should tell you everything you need to know as to whether or not whose side Elon's on, right? But no, I thought I just think the way. I mean, honestly, these are the two most hated men in America right now by the oligarchy, and for them to sit down and do an hour and a half conversation, and for Alex Jones just to kind of lay out the whole global. Said, dude, that could have been me giving that talk. The only difference is that I would have mentioned the British more, because if I have a question about who Alex Jones works for. The absence of the British in the whole thing is a little, it's a glaring error in my head, but
Right.
So
right. Extremely interesting, and I have to say, on the record, I've watched Alex Jones and listened to him a lot in the aftermath of 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say that his journalism is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
He's been on target, way, way, way ahead of he even predicted 9/11 literally weeks before it happened, and said this is going to happen, and they're going to blame Osama bin Laden, and they're going to go at war all over the place. This is what he predicted ahead of the event. So to make such a prediction, you have to understand certain things. So he does.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he's made himself easy to dismiss because of the antics.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just listen to the words he says and the dots he connects and the conclusions he reaches, it's absolutely first rate.
Yeah,
absolutely first rate. Now, why he doesn't mention the Brits, I'm curious about that. But this is very weird for a lot of people, because until very recently, this never even came into the discourse.
Right.
It was the Mossad, it was the Russians, it was the Chinese, it was the neocons, it was the Wall Street bankers, city of no, not
Not
yeah,
even
maybe
City of
city,
London,
even yeah, but in the sense of it, the
Club
it's
of Rome.
the bankers, but the fact that there's like a whole continuity of policy that stretches back to 1700s, that there's this foreign policy establishment that works deep in the shadow, and that they have such almost hermetic control over the media that no network will touch
Yep.
Brits. Never
Yep.
mention,
I know.
you know,
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I was reading Martin Armstrong the other day. Now I love Martin. I think Martin is brilliant, and I listen to very much a lot of what he says. I don't always agree with it, but that's, I mean, I don't agree with everything you say. I don't agree with I rarely agree with everything anyone says, even myself. And even he was like the other day was, promulgating this lie that the Brits are a vassal state to the United States. I'm like, I just don't buy that. I don't buy. I
yeah,
think if anything, it's a symbiotic relationship. I think certain factions within the U.S. power structure are beholden to the Brits, and certain ones are fighting against them, and certain ones are beholden to Europe, and certain ones are beholden to the Chinese. And sometimes it's the same person. When you're talking about somebody like Joe Biden, he's owned and operated by at least two different factions. John McCain was owned by so many freaking people that he would wake up on any random Thursday and not know who he actually owed money to and owed a favor to. So
yeah. But John McCain spent a lot of time in London.
yes, he did. Yes.
And get this. Um, so when did Ukraine start escalating attacks on Russia? It was December 2021, more or
Mm-hmm.
less. Where did Zelensky go in September of 2021 to have a 2-hour meeting with the head of the intelligence agency of that country? Take a wild guess.
I don't know. Can I call it? Can I use a lifeline? Uh,
Yeah, it was Sir Richard Moore
yeah,
of the MI6.
of course.
So, he didn't go to Langley, Virginia. He went to
Right,
London.
right.
And again, there's always that thing of
It's like anybody
in
who thinks, for example, anybody who thinks that Boris Johnson was sent to Istanbul or
Kiev
to blow up the talks
by
between,
Joe Biden.
yeah, but he was sent by Joe Biden, and it wasn't
Yeah,
not the other
too
way around.
weird.
I'm sorry, like that's just willfully obtuse.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
just it just is. You're just being willfully freaking obtuse because Joe Biden and Obama are not more powerful than freaking Boris Johnson is.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, I
And
just don't
then
buy it.
now there are now very serious papers being written. I just started reading one
Mm,
about how those negotiations were blown up.
mm.
And it seems to me, I haven't read it yet all the way, but it seems to me again that it's ultimately exonerating Boris Johnson again. Like they're painting the situation like it was Biden,
Oh yeah, because they're
written
because
by
they're going to get rid of Biden. Because they're going to get rid
former.
of Biden.
Yeah, yeah. And so they're gonna get rid of him. They're gonna blame a whole lot of shit on him.
Of course.
Like in the same kind of way, that they're blaming the destruction of Nord Stream pipelines on the Ukrainians.
Right.
Uh, because now they're as good as expendable. Well, they've always been expendable, but now
Yep.
they're actually being expended. And now they're going to say like, oh, you look at these crazy Ukrainians. They blew up Germany's pipeline, for which the Germans are going to reward them by doubling their aid. Hello.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
Seriously.
going to happen, but you remember that it was Annalena Baerbock well, I think it was November, it was last month. She was announcing that Germany was going to dramatically increase their aid to Ukraine. And then the next day or 2 days later, it came out that this Ukrainian official in prison was uh, confessing to blowing up the pipe. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It is.
Blow up your pipeline, and as a reward, you're going to double their, financial and military aid. Hello?
Right.
Wait, is everybody stupid?
Right. Yes, they do believe we're that dumb. They really do. And this is one of the things. To circle back to Alex Jones for just a minute. Alex talks about this in the interview with Tucker Carlson. He's like, it's not that I have some magic power or anything. I don't have any superpowers here. I just read their unreadable white papers. I just spend hours watching their unbelievably boring 3-hour meetings about how they're going to divvy up the world. I just listen to them. He just has Alex has a tremendous ability to connect dots and see things, and he's got a tremendously a tremendous mind. And don't get me wrong, I'm not, he has a particular skill set. But at the same time, he knows what to watch. He knows what's signal and what's noise, and then because of that, was able to distill out the good stuff. And he taught us. I'll be honest with you, he taught me how to do it. And he taught a lot of us. He taught an entire generation of us how to do it. And we all owe it. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I haven't really talked about Alex Jones very much. But like I watched Alex for years, in the early days. And I think back on it now and I'm like, dude, I'm not here today doing the things that I'm doing. I wouldn't be having this conversation with you if it wasn't for Alex Jones.
Right.
And, I think a lot of us wouldn't be here because he showed us how to do it. And he showed us what we needed to uncover because we had forgotten how to do it. And he did. I mean, there were always investigative journalists out there, or there were always muckrakers, and there were always people, writing unread newsletters and publishing on a monthly basis, or whatever, or toiling away in anonymity at various, at the city desk and various failing newspapers. But Alex figured out a way to do it in such a way to make it popular and make it interesting. And, antics aside, the man is a master broadcaster and taught us all a tremendous, gave us all a real gift of how to do it.
Yeah.
He built it from the ground up.
And big credit to Tucker Carlson to have him on.
Absolutely, because Tucker's doing the same thing now.
He gave him back legitimacy. I think that's
well,
huge.
And Tucker Carlson effectively was effectively canceled by Fox, who then turns around and says, "You know what? Fine, you're not going to shut me up. I'm going to go out. I'm going to go Alex Jones. He's cut from a different cloth, got a different background, took a different career path, but this is where he is now, and he's entertaining everything. And doesn't mean. And then and what I think, and watching him talk with Alex Jones." I was getting a little worried about Tucker for a little bit about some of the guests he was having on and some of the ideas he was embracing and whatnot. I'm like, nope, he's just him going and bringing on Alex Jones for an hour and a half. That tells me he's just willing now to he's willing to engage with all of it. He doesn't have an agenda at this point. His agenda now is I'm willing to engage with everything that I thought was bullshit. I now want to talk to these people because you know what? They may not be wrong. Yeah. Because he's questioning everything. He's now in that mode of questioning everything he was ever taught about everything.
Yes.
It's an interesting place for him to be.
I remember Tucker very well from the run up to the 2001 invasion of Iraq.
Sure.
He was a tool, but like a blunt tool of the establishment.
Absolutely, he was, and he'll admit it.
He worked it out. So, this actually gives me tremendous. This actually gives me tremendous optimism because it goes to show you that, not everybody is a malicious actor who's cynical and knowingly is doing the wrong thing. Some people just actually believe it. And then when they work it out, I'm watching Piers Morgan lately, and Piers Morgan, if I could sell the amounts of contempt I had for him, I'd become a rich man. But
me too.
But I've noticed that lately he's been doing his thing of being a blunt tool, but look at who he's bringing on, and he's letting them speak.
Yeah.
He's not interrupting them. He's not jumping all over them. He's not treating them with contempt. He is actually letting them speak. He brings Normal Finkelstein. He brings, all these people who normally, would never show up on Fox News or CNN or
Right.
BBC. And so, it goes to show you that every day that goes by, another person or 100 or 1,000 come to the bright side,
Well,
and
yeah.
and so the world is changing in a ways that are very, very difficult to quantify or to even
Hmm.
comprehend, but it's real. It's very, very real. And okay, but anyway, so all
No,
this optimism.
no, that's very, I think that's a good place to just about wrap up on this one, which is to say, I think for Tucker Carlson, the week he spent in the back of a limousine with Ron Paul during the 2008 campaign, I think changed everything. He became a different person after spending a week with Ron Paul. And I'm going to leave it there, because it, the point is that at some point you always have to rectify with the man in the mirror.
Yeah.
That's the guy you have to reckon with. And, for people, whose livelihoods depend on, the person, the image of the person in the mirror, as opposed to the person actually in the mirror, hey, you don't, you don't second guess it if it's working for you. You don't, if and that's that, until the day comes when you get information and you get a perspective that you've never seen before, and it's coming from the mouth of someone who you respect
And you
for how
cannot
they
see it, and
comport
you cannot
themselves
hear it.
in public, and you're like, I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And then eventually your perspective
Yeah.
changes, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah. Yeah.
then we find out then we really find out the character of the man. And I think Tucker Carlson, without a doubt, has passed that test.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
So,
And I think that this is probably happening at a very, very large scale. I remember also Judge Andrew Napolitano.
mm-hmm.
I thought he was a bit of a tool as well when he was on Fox.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now look at the work he's doing. It's awesome. And
It is.
what today
Well,
or yesterday?
Judge Knapp is an interesting case study, because Judge Knapp, when he was early on and when he was on with Fox, right, he was the token Austro-libertarian, and he went way down the deep end, and then he went too far, and they reined him in, and then he became a
Yeah,
tool for a few years before they finally got
yeah,
rid of him. And now he's back to being the Judge Knapp that that we all, that the Judge Knapp that he is today. He used to be that guy. Then he got slapped down,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah,
he
yeah.
went on. And then when he went on his own, and I think that,
Right.
and I give him, I've never worried about that. That it's clearly obvious that something, they used something against him for a little while. I'm just going to leave it there. I don't know anything more than that, but clearly there was a shift. He lost the one
Yeah,
show that
but
he had on. He had an afternoon show on Fox News, and it was great. We all tuned in every day. He was brilliant. And then he went ahead and
yes,
he
I
did
remember that too. Yeah, yeah, I remember that too. That was great. And then for a few years, he was, you know, uh,
during the Trump administration. He was horrific. I'll be honest
to
with
me,
you.
to me, a letdown. Yeah. And then, yesterday I think he had Naomi Klein, and
Yeah.
Naomi Klein, for the first time, because I thought she was a silver-tongued misleader.
Mm-hmm.
She kept going in these cycles of saying all the right stuff, and then kind of like Bernie Sanders,
Mm-hmm.
saying all the right stuff, and then when it came to doing something actually positive, do exactly the wrong thing.
Right.
And now on Napolitano's show, she was actually explaining how she came around and
Mm-hmm.
up to the fact that she was on the wrong side on a lot of
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah.
to the extent that she's being sincere and genuine, then that's another transformation.
Exactly.
And I think that these transformations are probably going on as we speak in in
Everywhere.
in, in dozens and hundreds and thousands.
No, yeah, I know,
So
yeah, she's another one, and and it's funny, when they occur. I remember when she wrote her apologia to the conservatives over what I was either the masks or COVID or whatever. And she did an honest, heartfelt, you know, I was wrong and this is why, and blah, 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 blah. And I can tell you that, I was like, great, outstanding. Reward behavior that you want to see from people, lambaste the behavior you don't. I will give her props. I will give her props unapologetically in public. And do you know that more than, than the response to me doing that was, well, where the fuck was she when we needed her? Like, dude, everybody has a different life than you. You should reward the fact that she got to where she is now and let it go. You can't, where were you? You were a shitbag at one point. Or, do we want to turn this around? Do we want to put focus it on you? No, you're just some asshole on the internet.
Right. Yeah, quite very good point. And also, had you met Edward Snowden in 2012, you would have thought that he was a tool of the deep state.
Of course.
And so, yeah, that's great. I have to say that gives me tremendous optimism. I think that I wanted to share one thought with you before we wrap up, because I think that I really enjoyed this conversation, Tom, because it's been kind of like a brainstorming session. I think I didn't even know a lot of the stuff before we started talking. Like the shit that was going to come out of my mouth. I wasn't even prepared for it. I felt
right.
Interesting. I have to remember this. I need to develop this a bit. But one of the things that I see happening is that the oligarchy in the West, in their panic, they're not letting go of the plans and agendas that no longer make sense, like destroying agriculture.
Right.
So Bill Gates bought up like massive swathes of agricultural land in the United States, which probably what he's going to use it for, maybe insects. For sure, he's not going to use it for healthy, nutritious, organic food. That's not why he bought it. And then, they're still going on destroying agriculture in Holland, in Germany, in Croatia, in the United States, in Canada, you name it. And what are they going to create? They're going to create a famine. They're going to potentially create a famine at the time when they are militarily really weak and unable to project power. And so what happens if you have food shortages in the United States? And remember, Russia has been investing tremendously in their agricultural output, and they have massive surplus of grain and all kinds of everything. You know what's going to happen? They're going to go like, okay, you need shipments of wheat and corn. We have it. We're going to be best friends now, like we were in the 19th century.
That's right.
And then they're going to say like, well, we'd like you to repeal the Magnitsky Act so that we can bring court cases to New York and to Washington and where we need. And, we think we want to do some war crime investigations and prosecutions. And at that point, it's going to be like, yeah, you got it. And that's how you end up disenfranchising the oligarchy. And so
we want our $300 billion back, by the way. Just saying.
No, but not only 300 billion. Then have another trillion that was stolen during the 1990s, during the
absolutely. Oh God, yes.
The transformation from communism to capitalism, quote unquote. So I think at this point they should be firing up all the coal plants, all the steel smelters, making massive investments in infrastructure and agricultural output. But the idiots are doing exactly the opposite. They're hysterically sawing the branch that they're sitting on, and they're going to make it that much easier for the Russians to come after them. That's if the oligarchy is successful, halfway successful at what they're doing to us on this side, they're digging their own grave.
Yep, whistling past their own graveyards. Yep.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, Alex. Here in the U.S., I mean, what I can see from you step 15 minutes outside of our 15-minute cities, and everybody thinks exactly like, yeah, they're not taking our cows from us.
Right.
Were they nuts? Like,
Yeah.
we know how to, it's not going to happen. So, on that note, we're not going to let civilization fall because we like it, and it's just the way things are. And
Yeah, we just want to do
easiest,
better.
yeah, it is just that simple. And like, I'm sorry, Yuval Harari, you need to go to the home along with Klaus Schwab and just and have your theories in the corner. You know, we don't have to chop your head off. You can just rant into the corner, and then we can pay per view your further descent into madness, and we can balance the budget as everybody watches. It'd be great. That's what we should do with all these freaking people. Just stick them
Yep.
in padded
Yep.
cells, and then charge nine, and then turn it into only tyrants, and be done with it. So, all right.
Yeah.
That's my bad joke for the afternoon, and we'll end it there. Alex, as always, it's been just an absolute pleasure and a gift every time
Likewise.
you get to we get a chance to talk. So we'll do it again.
Likewise, Tom. It was a pleasure. Have a great weekend. Warm greetings from cold Monaco to all your listeners. And until the next occasion when even more people are on our side.
Yeah, when people are on our side, and it's getting cold and finally in Florida this year. I had to actually run the stove this week, and actually had to run and go get firewood and then unload it and then pull the splinters out of my hands. So you take care, and you have a great weekend. We'll talk soon.
You too, Tom. Take care. Bye.
Well, that'll about wrap it up for episode 163 of the Gold Goats and Guns podcast. I want to thank Alex Krainer for taking the time out of his busy schedule to sit and chat with me about, well, whatever came into his head at the time. We didn't have a plan going into that podcast, and I always enjoy talking to Alex because invariably we wind up going to, frankly, all the right places, and it's always fun. So with that said, I'm out. You guys, as always, you can follow my work at my blog at tomluongo.me. You can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728, where the very worst version of me will come out on a daily basis. I guarantee it, because hell, I control the account. And you can, as always, you can sign up on Patreon and support me directly over at patreon.com/goldgoatsandguns, where we do twice weekly video podcasts called Market Reports, private blogs, and the monthly investor newsletter to give you a sense of how to invest in this crazy time. So if any of that sounds good, do the thing. We'll be back soon. You guys take care, be well, and keep your stick on the ice.